Hey everyone, I'm Matt, and welcome to the Good Trouble Show. Today we have a very special guest, but first, do us a solid and hit that thumbs up and subscribe button on YouTube, or a follow and an RT on Twitter. We are also podcasting on all major platforms. Just search for the Good Trouble Show with Matt Ford and you'll find us. Finally, your financial support enables us to bring you this show with exceptional guests. You can become a Patreon supporter for the price of a monthly Starbucks coffee. So go to www.patreon.com/The Good Trouble Show. And if you feel like it, buy us a virtual coffee. We also, we very much appreciate it. We also have our super chats open. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get right to it. Last Wednesday, Senator Kirstin Gillibrand held a hearing about UAP at the subcommittee hearing on emerging threats and capabilities. Joining us for analysis of that hearing is the founder of Disclosure Team, Vinnie Adams. Vinnie, how are you?
I'm good, Matt. Good to see you.
Excellent. And unfortunately, Katie was not able to join us today, so it's just the boys here today. So, so anyway, how are you? How's I understand you were where were you? You just came back from a pretty major trip.
Yes, so I was in Colombia for a couple of weeks. We were out continuing our investigations from last year and filming for the second season of our documentary show, Phenomenology, which it was a really successful trip. I can't go into too much detail because I'm kind of under somewhat of an NDA until the season premieres. It comes out in June, so.
I guess the NDAA didn't release you from the NDA for your thing, huh?
Absolutely not. No. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to it. Sorry, really, my tie is not very well done today. I had a few technical issues trying to get up and running today. Well, awesome. Well, firstly, thank you for joining us. It's great to see your face. As many people may not know, you were actually my very first interviewee. So I really appreciate it. You've been a really great friend to me and a great friend to the show. And anyway, as I mentioned, Katie wasn't able to join us today. So tell us a bit about your joint venture with Katie and Disclosure Team.
Yeah, so I've been running Disclosure Team as a podcast YouTube show for getting on for 2 years. It'll be 2 years in June. And after a sort of 140 somewhat interviews, I really wanted to expand the conversation. And, Katie has such a great, vast knowledge on many different aspects of the phenomena, whether it's the government side of things, the esoteric. And so it was just a natural thing that when I decided I wanted to try and get a co-host, she was my first choice. And I was just really, really delighted that she agreed to join me.
Yeah, I think she was probably like the second or third person I ever met on Twitter dealing with the UAP topic. I think you were the first or second. So that's great. Well, we look forward to having her on next time. So okay, so let's talk about the hearings. So for some of our audience, they don't track the UAP topic at all, and so Senator Kirstin Gillibrand, as I mentioned in the introduction, she held a hearing on UAPs, otherwise known as UFOs, for those not familiar with the UAP vernacular. And this hearing was held in the it was under the Subcommittee for Emerging Threats and what did I say? Technology, or no, there was something else. There was a second
Capabilities.
Word. Capabilities. That's right. I completely forget about it. So anyway, this was the first public appearance of the director of Aero, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. Now, backing up a bit, if you don't mind, just kind of give a quick rundown on what is Aero and where did it come from for our first-time viewers on this topic.
Sure, yeah. AARO is the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. It's the DoD's UFO research and analysis group, office, whatever you want to call it. This has come from previous iterations, which came out of, post Lou Elizondo and ATIP, went into the UAP task force, which became AIMSOG. You know what? I'm not even going to attempt that. It's been too long. But there has been a few iterations, and here we are. I think it's been around for about 9 months, AARO now. And we've not heard that much about how it's been operating, about its budget and everything. So this really was the first chance for people to see the director, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, and maybe learn a little bit more about what the office is doing and how it's progressing with its workload.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was really interesting about it, everyone, including myself, I had heard about this hearing probably about a week before it was announced, but didn't want to say anything until it was confirmed. But everyone on UFO Twitter, everyone was like, "What's going to happen? Is this going to be a nothing burger? Is it going to be something significant?" Everyone, it was really anyone's guess. I certainly had no visibility into it, but it was interesting in that it was the first time to see Dr. Kirkpatrick in front of everyone. And I know a lot of people, including myself, have been a bit critical about his efforts. And anyway, we'll get into that in a little bit. But anyway, so we picked some clips from the hearing that we thought we would play for our audience, and we would both kind of give our feedback on. So anyway, so here's Senator Kirstin. I keep saying Kirsten. It's actually Kirstin Gillibrand. Hitting on a few points. So let's watch this first clip.
Congress established AERO. We made it clear that we expect vigorous action. We added very substantial initial funding for the office, but despite our best efforts, the President's budget for fiscal years 23 and 24 requested only enough funding to defray the operating expenses of AERO. It included almost no funds to sustain the critical research and development necessary to support a serious investigation. It took a letter to Secretary Austin from Senator Rubio and me and 14 other senators to get the office temporary relief for the current fiscal year.
Yeah, so it's interesting that well, I mean, and I think we'll get into it a little bit, but here in a bit. But it's interesting how we found out that this thing was not funded to the level that they requested. Any thoughts on that, or where that kind of holdup was?
I mean, it's pretty clear now after seeing the hearing that there's some stonewalling going on in multiple areas with regards to AARO. But what really struck me was that the rumor mill for the last 9 months since AARO had been working is that they were very limited on staff. People weren't turning up to the office and doing work and things like that. And then we learned that they actually do have groups of people working with them. So I'm still a little bit confused as to what's going on. But it does seem I've got copious amounts of notes here on lots of different points that I found interesting in the hearing. They have a lot to work with, but they need people to do it. So I think, as the senator said, they need the funding required to be able to do this job, to be able to, get through the data and maybe eventually give us something good.
Right. And one of the things that I was surprised about, I wasn't aware of this, and I believe I have a clip about this later, was that we discovered that AERO is still under the control of OUSD INS, which is Office of Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, which of course is the office that Lou Elizondo ran. And he actually, I believe he posted something somewhat recently on Twitter where he said, let's not forget that this was the office that was behind all the obfuscation on this particular topic. So I think that was the thing that really kind of floored me, was that, and I'm guessing this lack of funding was due to my guess, personal opinion, obfuscation from USD INS, because there wasn't Senator Gillibrand, I think wasn't it like a couple of weeks ago that there was a hearing where she had Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, and I believe she asked him about that funding, right, or something of that nature.
Yeah, there's been a couple of things where she's mentioned it to, I think, people from Stratcom. I think Avril Haines was in one of the hearings as well. Mm-hmm. And it was very funny because you could clearly see how uncomfortable these people were when they were asked about the funding, and they were like, "Oh, we'll look into it." And obviously the senator then goes, "Please do, you must, I'm imploring you to." It just seems that everything's being really slow. And, I thought by now it would be out from under OUSD INS. I thought it'd probably be somewhere like directly to DNI or
Right.
something like that. That would work a lot better, in my opinion.
Right.
But who knows? It just seems, like I said earlier, it seems like they're being stonewalled and slowed down from different angles with regards to getting the office up and running fully to its potential.
Sure. Okay. Let's watch this next clip from the hearing.
Finally, one of the tasks Congress set for AERO is serving as an open door for witnesses of UAP events or participants in government activities related to UAPs to come forward securely and disclose what they know without fear of retribution for any possible violations of previously signed non-disclosure agreements.
So what exactly, and again, speaking to the audience that has no idea about exactly what went into the FY National Defense Authorization Act, what is called the NDAA. And for those folks that are not familiar with it, that is the piece of legislation, if you want to call it that actually funds our military. And it's a piece of legislation that everyone has input on. You know, this program needs this much. This program needs to be formed. Now, in the FY23 NDAA, it was either 32 or 33 pages of legislation on UAP, and one of the first provisions was the whistleblower reprisal and protection clause. What, as far as you know, was the source of that, and why is that important?
I mean, I'm not too sure on the original source of that, but I do believe it really is just for anybody that has worked historically in any programs relating to UFOs or UAP. And for witnesses to come forward. Now, these people could have signed lifelong NDAs where they're not able to speak about these things. So this part of the legislation enables them to come forward without any reprisal, without anything happening to them, any suffering that may occur in the future. So, it seems to be working. We hear that there have been almost 24 come forward so far. Now, we're also hearing that they're making them pay their own way to get to DC to report what they know. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. I've seen it reported. I haven't seen the evidence. It could be true. It might not be. But it's working. It's happening. So, yeah, I mean, again, this comes back to the operating functions of AARO as a whole. Dr. Kirkpatrick and whatever team he's got have got a lot of different things to work on. They've got the 650 cases that he said that they're working on. They've got the historical UFO information from the government to work on. Then they've got the whistleblowers that they've got to investigate these claims made by these new witnesses that are coming forward. It's an awful lot of work to be doing when you're getting stonewalled from left, right, and center.
Right, and what many people may not understand is folks that were involved. Let's say you were an Air Force officer that was working on a Minuteman ICBM squadron, and you had UAPs come in and disable your flight of 10 Minuteman missiles, nuclear-tipped Minuteman missiles. After that event, and this is well documented, and these were some of the people that actually came forward and testified to AARO. Following these events, the Air Force Office of Special Investigation, which is kind of like their version of the FBI, would force these folks, or many of them, not absolutely all of them, but I'm guessing 99.9% of them, they would force them to sign a national security non-disclosure agreement. And some of the penalties for breaking that agreement were a time in Leavenworth prison, loss of pension, $10,000 fine, as I think was the monetary fine, and then of course loss of security clearance. So a lot of these folks, when they exit the military, especially people that have performed functions within the military where they had a top secret clearance or above top secret clearance, that is literally gold to these people. This is what provides their future employment outside of the military, because these clearances take a huge amount of money to adjudicate, or whatever the proper term would be. So if they are threatening the aside from like prison time or anything like that, if they're just flat out threatening your security clearance, you may not have a job. A contractor that is running some kind of top secret program that is hiring people that need that level of clearance, they may not be able to get a job. So it's a significant thing. So I think that, my hat is off to Senator Gillibrand and others that put that in there, because it now has allowed these folks that have signed these national security non-disclosure agreements to come and testify to their senator, to their congressman, and to Arrow without fear of legal reprisal. Now, in terms of whistleblowers, and obviously, we all have kind of heard rumors. What are you hearing in terms of who, or not who, I would say, but what kind of whistleblowing about what? What were these folks testifying to Arrow about, from what you've heard from your sources?
I mean, I have heard, and I haven't been able to completely validate these claims, but I have heard from sources that some of the witnesses that have come forward have worked on legacy programs with relation to either back engineering of UFO materials, metamaterials, and also crash retrieval programs. Crash retrieval programs. So it may not just be people involved in incidents, as you mentioned there, like the ICBM cases. It could actually be something a lot more deeper and darker than that. But again, these claims cannot be validated at this time. But I know I'm not the only person that's hearing these things from sources.
Right. Yeah. No. The same thing. The same thing here. Okay. Let's have a look at another clip here, where actually I don't know what this clip was, so we'll find out together. Here we go.
I recognize that this answer is unsatisfying to those who in good faith assume that what they see with their eyes, with their cameras, and with their radars is incontrovertible evidence of extraordinary characteristics and performance. Yet time and again, with sufficient scientific quality data, it is fact that UAP often, but not always, resolve into readily explainable sources. Humans are subject to deception and illusions, sensors to unexpected responses and malfunctions, and in some cases, intentional interference.
Now, I mean, that one kind of took me a bit by surprise, mainly from the whistleblower point of view. Now, of course, I can understand footage from an FA-18 that ends up being a balloon or a seagull, something like that. But where I was really kind of floored by this whole hearing was a seemingly lack of acknowledgement of what the whistleblower said. We actually put out a video that we were grateful that Lou Elizondo retweeted, where we addressed Dr. Kirkpatrick directly and just said, look, you don't need to rewind the scientific clock back to zero. You have over 80 years and billions of dollars of government-funded research on UAP. But really, what I think is one of the most important things is just talk about what the whistleblowers have come forward with. Now, I do know from some of the whistleblowers that I've spoken with, they did have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I'm sorry, the ones that showed up in person signed one. There were some whistleblowers that testified over a secure telephone connection, and they had to verbally agree to a non-disclosure agreement. However, the extent of that non-disclosure agreement was that they could not discuss, or they could not reveal who the person was that was asking the questions, and then two, they could not reveal the questions. However, they were perfectly okay to discuss their experience. So I found that was interesting that they did have to do that. But I mean, don't you think it's like these guys have such amazing stories to share, and to just say that Robert Salas or any of these folks that had significant encounters with UAP, that it was just some form of deception or something that they imagine. In my view, it feels like kind of a slap in the face to these whistleblowers.
Yeah, I see it from that point of view, but I also see it kind of from an opposing point of view. I've got a good friend who worked very closely in the past with Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick at Space Command, and so I've got to know a bit about Dr. Kirkpatrick through asking a few questions to my friend, and he's a very methodical. That's it. I got there at the end. He's very methodical, so he likes to see something right through to the end before putting it out there, let's say. So I think he's probably heard from these whistleblowers and he's taken all the information on board. But I think He's the kind of guy who's likely to then go off and explore and research and analyze and do all sorts of things with this information before talking about it.
Right.
I think that's the impression that I get of him. And that's not just with regards to the whistleblowers, with regards to all of the research and investigating that Arrow are doing with we know some of the systems in place with regards to having the intelligence community, scientists and engineers forming different groups to analyze data. This is the kind of person that Dr. Kirkpatrick is. So it wasn't a surprise to me that we didn't get sort of further down the road that we may have liked to.
Do you think, one thing when I was listening to him, I completely see where you're coming from, and I think that was very obvious in his testimony. And he did speak about his sort of scientific process and relying on the scientific method for this. But what I'm wondering, and maybe this is something better put to a scientist, maybe we could have Dr. Gary Nolan back on, but like as a scientist, how do you deal with whistleblower testimony? In other words, if you have, I mean, obviously, so things like sensor data, things off of, jet aircraft or whatever, that is hard data that you can process, that you can analyze, that you can show to different engineers and say, is this a sensor anomaly or is this real or whatnot? Like that's a hard piece of material, piece of evidence that you have. What I can't wrap my head around is with his process as a scientist. Again, I'm not a scientist. I just play one on TV. How do you take whistleblower testimony from, say, like Robert Salas or let's say it was Eric Davis with crash retrieval, when it's anecdotal? Will it ever be, do you think it, and I know this is conjecture, but do you think that this would ever be considered solid evidence by him?
Potentially. I mean, it's really difficult, like you say, and I'm just speculating here. I mean, some of the cases and incidents, probably obviously the more recent ones, there may be, lines of inquiry that he can go down, and with clearances that he may be able to get some information from some classified area. Again, this comes down to how much power Dr. Kirkpatrick has. I think we're going to speak in a bit about the Title 10, Title 50 kind of authorities and things like that. So again, it just seems that in this first year of Arrow's, functioning, that it's just the engine's just not ready.
Uh-oh. We might have lost him. Oh, looks like we lost him on the Skype connection. All right, well, since I have a very large production team here, I'll get them right on it. That'll be me. So I'm going to try dialing him back right now. So hold on one second. Just 1 second. All right, let's see what happened here. The magic of television, ladies and gentlemen. Probably most of you are too young to remember what cable access TV was like, where people were doing stuff out of their bedroom, kind of like I am. So things haven't changed too much. Vinnie, are you back? Is that you?
It is. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Yeah, great. All right. Well, I probably flashed everyone with my jogging pants. It's business up front and party down below, or however you want to put it. Anyway, so before I was so rudely interrupted by our Skype interface box taking a big shit, we were talking about what kind of power Dr. Kirkpatrick has. So let's take a look at that, and hopefully Skype doesn't drop you again. Here we go.
My time's just about up. I'd love to follow up about your risk management methodologies for some of these, but do you need any authorities that you don't have to get the data?
There are some authorities that we need. We currently are operating under Title 10 authorities.
Okay, so Title 10 authority. So I was on the phone with Chris Sharp, the excellent journalist from your side of the pond earlier, and he was explaining to me that Title 10 really isn't enough for Dr. Kirkpatrick to go banging on any doors. What can you tell us about Title 10, or whatever title he needs?
Yeah, sure. I'll hold my hands up. I'm very limited on my knowledge of Title 10 and Title 50 also. But from my basic understanding, Title 10 authorities relate more to your military branches, so your Navy, Air Force, Army, and not much more than that. And now operating under Title 50, which are kind of the authorities that Sean Kirkpatrick would need, would go right out in a big spread of all the intelligence agencies and things like that, where he can really get a lot more data and information and work a lot better and more efficiently. So
essentially, how I understand it, let's just say that the whistleblowers have gone to Aero and said, this is where this unacknowledged special access program exists regarding crash retrieval. This is the name of the special access program. This is who is hiding it from Congress and doing other things that are, well, not really democratic. And so with under Title 10, how I understand it, he does not have the power to go knocking on those doors, right?
Yeah, that's it. Again, like I said, I'm not going to pretend like I know much about it, but we know that Lou Elizondo worked under Title 50. And they have worked on these under these authorities in the past. So just to be given basic authority, again, I'm going to probably regret saying that. Like I probably got it wrong. But it's my belief that Lou Elizondo was working under Title 50 authorities. But yeah, I think again this is just another example. Like I've said a couple of times already, that this man has got a job to do, and he's doing his best to what I can see with the limited functions that he's been given to kind of start with.
Got it. Yeah, I didn't know about the Title 50 thing until Chris Sharp brought it up. But that does make sense. If he is not given the appropriate access, then how can he do his job? Which makes me suspicious of USDINS, that they're trying to tie one hand behind his back and derail this whole shooting match, which wouldn't surprise me. So back to Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. He had this to say about the extraterrestrial or non-human hypothesis, whatever you want to call it.
I should also state clearly for the record that in our research, Aero has found no credible evidence thus far of extraterrestrial activity, off-world technology, or objects that defy the known laws of physics. In the event sufficient scientific data were ever obtained that a UAP encountered can only be explained by extraterrestrial origin, we are committed to working with our interagency partners at NASA to appropriately inform U.S. government's leadership of its findings.
Yeah, I tell you what, one thing, he is certainly rocking that tie chain. I don't think I've seen that for quite a while. I might have to add one here just below my microphone. Anyway, that's interesting. So essentially what he's saying is that if we do come across evidence of a non-human intelligence, that we're going to go to NASA, talk to NASA about it, and then NASA will go talk to the executive branch. Any thoughts on that? I was a bit surprised by that statement, in addition to surprised by seeing a 1980s tie chain.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that tie chain is a strong look. So yeah, my hat tip to Dr. Kirkpatrick for that. Right. As far as going to NASA, yeah, I was just as surprised as you. I would have expected him to say he would go to the regular departments or offices or whoever. I didn't expect NASA to be the one that came out of his mouth. So yeah, really took me by surprise.
Yeah, for sure. And Bill Nelson, he hasn't really said anything recently, other than kind of his statement a while back about what these Navy pilots saw was up here and down there and over here and over there, that kind of thing. I don't think he said anything recently, right?
Yeah, I've not heard anything at all. Obviously NASA is still doing their preliminary assessment, I guess you could call it, on whether they're going to go forward later on this year to actually do a full study on what materials they have had in the past on UAP. So, maybe we're going to hear from Bill Nelson. I think that comes up in September. So fingers crossed we hear something by then. Okay,
I wasn't aware of that. So what specifically are you hearing? That's when NASA's report is due, or I knew they had like some kind of they were standing up some kind of group to study the phenomenon, but I have not kept up with that.
Yeah, it was a very confusing thing even when it was first announced. So the way I understand it, and I think a lot of people do, is that they formed this group, and I think it's 16 scientists and things like that, all came together to assess whether NASA should do a study on UAP. So I think this is about a 9-month process that they're going to go through to decide whether to do a report or to do research. It's like a preliminary assessment is the only way I can really see it. So by September, I think they will announce, yes, we will look back at the NASA archives and everything that we've had in the past, and we will see what we can find out about UAP. They may turn around and go, after 9 months of 16 scientists looking into it, we're not going to take this any further. So who knows?
What have you, and this is kind of part of the whole phenomenon that I haven't really looked into, and I'm not a UFO researcher at all. I'm just, I don't know what I am. Anyway, what have you heard in terms of like what astronauts have seen? Certainly you would think with all of the space missions that NASA has performed, I'm sure they've seen more than rocks out there.
Yeah, I mean, historically, I think it's pretty just well known generally in the UFO community that astronauts have seen objects on their missions, whether it be on the moon, on the way back from the moon, in low Earth orbit, STS missions, the space shuttle missions. It's been at the forefront of the conversation for a few decades now. Again, it's not something that's just clearly proven like that, but
right.
There's so many videos which could be real, could not be real, could show anomalous craft,
right.
could be something prosaic. It's a really interesting conversation. And when you have people like Dr. Edgar Mitchell, a very strong proponent and believer of the UFO subject, then you got to kind of think it holds a little bit of weight.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. I love Bill Nelson. The guy just seems to be like very like matter of fact, and he's kind of got the swagger to him that it's like, wow, you're one cool dude. Okay, so let's I diverged a little bit from the hearing. Okay, this was one graphic we want to talk about that Dr. Kirkpatrick showed during the hearing. Let's take a look at this.
So one of the things that AERO does is high integrity analysis, as I've said. This chart represents the trend analysis of all the cases in AERO's holdings, right, to date.
Okay, so I'm going to leave this graphic up for a second while we're talking about it. Now, I did not catch this until when we were doing the live stream of the hearing, until I saw some folks on Twitter point this out. Now, we all kind of thought that UAP, AERO, and all that kind of stuff happened, around 2007 or whatever. But if you look at this report, it shows 1996 UAP reporting trends. What is it? What all, besides that, is there anything else that is also interesting about this graphic?
The first thing that stood out to me, obviously, was that on the top right there, you can see that they've broken down the shapes of the objects. This is something that we wanted to be released last year in the UFO report that came out as well. I'm finally glad that we're getting to see shapes. Then I did see the 1996, and that threw me because from what I can, we've not heard why or of any specific cases that date back to 1996. I'm sure there are some, but, as Dr. Kirkpatrick stated towards the start of the hearing, they really are focusing on the military cases and the IC cases. So, yeah, I'd love to know where that date comes into play. Yeah,
I would too. That one really kind of surprised me once someone threw that out. And it'll be interesting. And do you know, like, when is there another public appearance that is scheduled with him, or is the next thing that we would expect from AERO another report? I haven't heard of anything, I don't think.
Yeah, it's been up and down in the conversation since the last report came out. When is the next public report? Is it going to be Halloween again, at the end of October? But then towards the end of the hearing, Dr. Kirkpatrick mentioned that there will be another quarterly report and there will be another annual report. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, is that I think he mentioned something was coming up soon. So that would be one of those two reports. So whether that then goes to Congress only, whether it's a classified report, I don't know. Obviously, let's hope that we do get another public report, but I think we're going to get annual. This is me just saying this, not anything else. I think we'll get annual public reports, and I think Congress will get quarterly reports as well on top of that, classified.
Well, yeah, I think that's the main thing. Is I totally understand that they're gonna submit classified reports, but hopefully we'll see more of the unclassified stuff. Okay, so kind of jumping back to to whistleblowers, I thought this was a very interesting question and very we'll talk about it. Here we go.
As you know, Dr. Kirkpatrick, Congress has mandated that your office establish a discoverable and accessible electronic method for potential witnesses of UAP incidents and potential participants in government UAP-related activities to contact your office and tell their stories. Congress also set up a process whereby people subject to non-disclosure agreements, preventing them from disclosing what they may have witnessed or participated in, could tell you what they know without risk of retribution from or violation of their NDAs. Have you submitted a public-facing website product for approval to your superiors, and how long has it been under review?
I have. We submitted the first version of that before Christmas.
Okay, but before Christmas. Now, this guy, he's like an SES2, which is, I think, what is it, Senior Executive Service. This guy, he's like a 2-star general. And this is where I'm going to be very critical of him. It seems to me that if the number one piece of the number one thing in your mandate in the NDAA is whistleblower and reprisal protection, the first thing you're going to do is try and stand up some sort of front-facing website or interface so that, if I worked for the Air Force and I saw something, I would know where to go. Right now, it is just folks in Congress that are filtering people to Arrow. There's no front-facing mechanism. So my question is, why did it take him 11 months, a 2-star general who, or the equivalent of a 2-star general, who could essentially, just pick up the phone and say, hey, I want a website in a month, and heaven and earth would move in order to satisfy that. So I'm kind of I don't know about that. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's clear in the way that Senator Gillibrand mentioned it there. He's had to put these things to his superiors to get authorized, and he did it before Christmas, similar time to when the NDAA was released. So to me, it sounds like the law was passed, or it was about to be passed. Right. He applied, whether that's the right word or not, to get this portal up and running. And then again, being under OUSD-INS, he's getting stonewalled. They are slowing the process down, and it's kind of out of his hands. He's the one who's done his part of the, that small job. Is it as simple as ringing up Moultrie and Bray or someone like that and going, sir, please hurry up with this port? I don't know the inner workings, but to me, I think it sounds like he's done his part, and it's just being slowed down from above.
I'm hoping that is the case, and I think too that is certainly possible. If you listen to his testimony carefully when he was questioned about OUSD-INS, the guy was very careful in his wording, careful in the way that, like, if somebody were asking me about my boss publicly, I would be very, very careful about what I said. Lest I, be called into the office and fired right away. Not that I think that Moultrie would fire him, but yeah, and again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the program, where where Lou Elizondo was saying, look, this is the organization that has been lying to Congress and the American public about it. So if you're Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick and you are still beholden to USD-INS, you can only move. And again, it's giving him the benefit of the doubt. And I know I've been very critical about him in the past, but after hearing that, hearing his testimony, I'm also getting the feeling that they are slow rolling this, and then you have to ask why. And there may only be so much he can do if he is reporting to USD-INS and he's not happy with how things are going. What's he going to do? Squawk? It's like when you're not happy with your boss, you most people aren't just going to go stand up and start squawking about it. They're going to try and let the process play out. And as my partner in D.C. often tells me, she says, you in D.C. things move very slowly, and you have to give them time to breathe. So what were your thoughts on the hearing? Is there anything that we haven't touched on that that you think would be worth bringing up? You mentioned earlier that you had quite a few notes about it, and I would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, and what I found interesting, and I'm apologies for looking down at my notes while I talk, is that there is a lot going on. There's a lot of things he's got to cover. They're trying to standardize the UAP reporting system for military personnel, pilots, etc. There's another piece of the puzzle that he's trying to work on. I do like the way that they're reviewing and researching the data that comes in. He's made it very clear that a lot of the data on these cases just is insufficient, in which case they cannot close a lot of the cases. They have to remain just sitting there. That doesn't help, but it takes time. Again, time. This is the thing that he needs more of.
Right.
One of his quotes is, I cannot answer decades of questions all at once, but we must begin somewhere. So, he's very clear about what he's got to do, and he's doing it, or he's started to do it. This is a new office. It's 9 months old, with all of this lack of funding, lack of Title 50 authority, the lack of the portal, the whistleblower portal that he just mentioned. And also in that, he mentioned that there may be a web portal for declassified materials as well, something else that we've yet to hear much about or to see the light of day. So, when you're trying to juggle these many things, then, I may sound like a Sean Kirkpatrick apologist here, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt at the moment, and let's just see how things progress in the future, and maybe my views will change.
Well, and we should. And again, as I've said, I have been a bit skeptical about him. Going back to that Title 50 thing, Osvaldo, and I'm going to butcher his name, Disclosure Revolution or whatever on Twitter. He had that video where he was at some kind of fundraiser or town hall. I think it was actually a town hall of Senator Kirstin Gillibrand, where he went up to her and asked her about the progress of Aero. And one thing that she did mention was that Dr. Kirkpatrick was not having any luck in accessing historical UAP data. And I don't remember if he said programs or whatnot. And Senator Gillibrand said, we'll just try and get what you can right now. But I wonder if that has anything to do with that whole Title 50 thing. Because we know all of that stuff probably sits in special access programs. So if he's only under Title 10, maybe that's what he was talking about.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It's possibly a combination of that and agencies and other branches simply not wanting to give the information up so easily. This is something that's been going on for so many decades. I can't imagine they're just suddenly going, oh, okay, here you go, and just, as if it's nothing. It's never going to be easy. So yeah, again, it's speculation. But it was great that Ozzy got a chance to speak to Senator Gillibrand. It gave us at the time a little insight into the kind of way things are working, and it's really helpful. And it's great that we have so many people in the community that are willing to kind of go that extra step and do something to try and help the cause. Let's say.
I totally agree. I just lost one other thought. Maybe it'll come back to me. And I know what it was. One of the things that he mentioned, and he kind of made it. When I first heard it, I thought he was being snarky. But when I listened to it later today, re-listened to the thing, it was like, he's actually making a really good point. And essentially, what he was saying to the senators is, thank you for the whistleblowers that you've brought in, but please be selective in how many you send us, because we just don't have the staff to process it all. Researchers, I think, is how he put it. And again, I'm not being an apologist for Dr. Kirkpatrick, but I think maybe in hindsight, I was a little bit too hard on him. And we got to, if he's not being given the resources, and he's not able to provide the deliverables, then you can say, okay, it's not having the resources, be it money, access, or whatnot. And later down the line, if he's given all the accesses and he still doesn't deliver, then that's a separate conversation. So before we get to some listener questions here, anything else that you think is interesting about that hearing that would be worth talking about?
There were a couple of small kind of one-liners that he popped in there that I did, I may be reading between the lines a little bit, but he did say a small percentage display characteristics that can be described as anomalous. That's always a nice thing to hear. There was another line that said that some of these cases showed advanced technical signatures, things like that. I'd love for him. And these are the things I thought Senator Gillibrand has always been great when she covers the UAP subject. I did feel like there were so many opportunities in that hearing just to give some follow-up questions, basically, to some of the points that Dr. Kirkpatrick made, because I know a lot of people in the community will be like, you should just push a little bit more. And maybe push is the wrong word. Just follow up with a simple question, just to kind of go a little bit deeper. She didn't do that, but hey, that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, you're about like the 10th person I've heard say that exact same comment. And it's understandable. And maybe a little bit frustrating for those of us that are looking for these answers. One thing that someone also brought up to me, which I think could very much be the case, is she may be playing sort of a larger game in terms of maybe she needed to get on the record, which I think was certainly the case, that he's still operating under Moultrie's purview, which is probably not a good thing in my opinion, and that he's not, that they never got the funding that they were supposed to get. So therefore, he cannot accomplish the congressional intent that was laid forth simply because he doesn't have the financial thing. Thirdly, she definitely pointed out that he doesn't have the Title 50 access. So there's that. So I think I think those are all very, very good points. And the purpose of this hearing, or her putting it together, and it certainly was a smaller scale hearing than the House Intelligence Subcommittee hearing about coming up on a year ago. Maybe she just needed to accomplish those very specific points. Once they were on the record, then she would be able to force the topic.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and again, I have no data about this other than knowing that Moultrie was on the advisory board for Battelle, and I think everyone knows that Battelle was involved in some kind of back engineering program. So. It's just everything. I think many roads lead to him. It's pure speculation, but that's it. Anyway, any other thoughts before we hop to some questions?
I did like it that he was talking about external science organizations and academia at one point, and he did mention the ones with the relevant clearance. So maybe there are groups that he wants to work with, or help do the research and analysis for him that have yet to be given the relevant clearances that they would need in able to work with Arrow. Again, this is just kind of what I drew from the way he was saying it. So again, it shows that he's thinking outside of the DOD as well. He's looking to those sort of groups on the peripherals that may be able to help as well.
Right. Yep, absolutely. Okay, let's get to some questions. I don't have anybody moderating today, so we're kind of going old school. So I'm going to try and scroll up. Only have a few here. Okay, this question comes from, actually backing up a bit, anyone has any questions, please type them in all caps, because I'm pretty blind, as you can tell from my glasses. Anyway, let's see here. A question from Xavier, however you say it. What is Vinnie most looking forward to this year in regards to the phenomenon?
Wow, that's a big question.
That's a big question, yeah.
Well, there's always so much going on, isn't there? There's so much civilian research and going on. I'm always following, the people in the community that are really doing the work on that side of things. Obviously, we'll continue to follow this aspect of Arrow and the government's, workings, let's say, towards whatever happens, whether anything happens or not. So I guess the thing I'm most excited about is just watching the community kind of progressing with this. And I'm trying to skirt around that a little bit. I have an announcement I'm making in a couple of weeks, which
awesome.
I wish I could make
What's
now,
the announcement?
but
You can bring it out here. That's okay.
no, let's say I'm looking forward to meeting some people and having some really interesting conversations, and that'll all become clear in a couple of weeks. So that's what I'm most looking forward to. But I'm not one to be on Twitter saying announcement coming soon. So I'm kind of sorry I brought that up, but I was deflecting from answering the question to a degree.
Don't be sorry. No, I appreciate you bringing it up on our show. And when this happens, we will. You've been such a great friend to us, and we love to help our fellow activists and podcasters out. So yeah, man, that's awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, now my brain is going. Yeah, I wonder what it is here. Okay, so Xavier, thank you for that. Xavier says thank you for putting on the show as always, Matt. Fantastic. It's a team effort, as I always say when it comes to this topic. We are supportive of anyone that is into it for the right reasons and has a constructive part to play in this whole thing. So anyway, thank you. Okay, let's see from Jay McKay. What about the Air Force bases in Europe, which are completely not shown in the map? Is the Air Force not participating with reporting? I don't know if that's two questions. I'm not real sure. I
think it's with relations, the map on the graphic that we showed, the 96 to 2023. So in that map, and correct me if I'm wrong, whoever asked that question, is that there were hotspots on the map on that page that didn't show all of the Air Force bases, maybe in Europe, and that maybe cases had been, happening. So
interesting.
I think that's what he was referring to. I think so.
Got it. Well, as I scroll down, maybe he will have responded. Xavier, again, with another great question. Does Vinnie have any teasers of what to expect this time around in season 2 of the phenomenon? Boy, people are like really hammering you to spill the beans on something.
It's so hard because I hate not being able to talk about things. This is not a position I ever saw myself being in. Unexpected things happened, and it kind of goes slightly away from the phenomena into left field completely.
Awesome.
I'll leave it at that.
All right, I can't wait to tune in. Well, and again, forgive me if you already said this. When does this air for everyone?
So episode 1 of season 2 will premiere in June of this year, so in the summer.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Great. Let's see. My question comes. Part of mine attached. Sorry, going through here, trying to get through the stuff. Kind of some chat here. We might have got. Oh, here we go. James Chronister. Hi, Matt. And this is actually a question for me. In March 10th podcast, you mentioned a friend in Florida who filmed a Tic Tac UAP. Is there somewhere to watch this video? Unfortunately, no. I do have the video, but it is not mine to share. But I will tell you that it appeared what this person was filming was off in the distance. When I threw a little video filter on it and it inverted the video, you did see a clear Tic Tac shape. But it's not mine to share. This person decided not to share it. This person is not involved at all in the UAP community. This person's a political operative, so not my place to share. But what I will share is that if I did show it to you, it probably wouldn't be considered that compelling. Which brings me up another friend of mine. We were talking about this, and this is somebody that works in the intelligence community that has seen a lot of the classified footage. And this person has said, look, even if I showed you that footage, you probably wouldn't be as blown away as you might expect. It's just, and I think it's with all of these like photos and videos, it's how much weight you give to it is sort of a bit of a personal perception, right? You know, it's what might be impressive to one person is not necessarily impressive to the other. And of course, you'll have the folks that'll say, "Oh, that's just CGI," or weather balloon or whatnot. I mean, what do you think, Vinnie? Because I'm almost kind of thinking like the only way that people will finally believe it is some kind of show and tell of a physical craft we have. Have you ever put any thought into that?
I have, yeah. I mean, I've heard there are a small handful of videos that are, really eye-opening, really kind of icing on the cake kind of thing. But the majority of videos, as you say, the majority of videos on the classified servers, whether it be on JWICS or any of these interagency servers, do generally, as a standalone video, they're not that impressive. It's when you collate the additional sensor data, put them with the video, that it really starts to paint a really compelling picture. So there is, like I said, there's only one or two videos that I've heard about that apparently exist that are just, the smoking gun kind of videos that everybody wishes that we could see. So, yeah.
Who is okay? So moving forward here, what do you have cooking up on the Disclosure Team podcast and show?
Right. Well, I mean, it's obviously been a bit of a quiet few weeks for me, being in Colombia. So I've come back to have to, organize a lot of shows. So tomorrow, which is Sunday, the 23rd of April, I'm going to be live with Dan Zetterstrom, the Signal, who was
awesome.
a part of the phenomenology team in Colombia. We're going to be just sharing a lot of our own personal photographs and videos that we took kind of behind the scenes of the filming without showing too much of what we were up to. It's going to be more of kind of what we did in our downtime and things like that. Just a bit of fun, just to kind of, say hello to everyone and get back into the swing of things, doing the live shows. And then I do have 2 interviews coming up, which I haven't announced yet. I think I arranged them about an hour before we came on the air. I'm going to be joined again by Dr. Michael Masters. I've got the date, but I can't remember it. So people could just look out for that on my channel or my social medias. And then John Ramirez is going to be joining me as well. Me and Katie, sorry. In a couple of weeks' time as well. So that should be an interesting conversation.
Awesome. Well, we certainly look forward to that. So where can we find you? What are your social links? We have them in the description, but if you want to tell everyone where they can follow your excellent work.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Matt. I guess I've got all sorts. The best one to go to would be Instagram, where you can find me at @disclosure_team. There you'll find a link to all my links, where you can kind of go and find me on Twitter and YouTube and everything like that. But generally, if you search Disclosure Team on any network, you'll probably find my profile there somewhere. And the logo, which is, it was there. I've gone small screen, but the black and white logo is it stands out, so people should be able to recognize it. So yeah, there it is.
Awesome. Yes. All right. Fantastic. Yeah. That first interview that I did on this topic was with both you and Dan, and that was a lot of fun. But
that's right.
I was also, I remember I was very nervous, and I think I told you this. I guess like, oh my God, you guys are royalty to me in this particular particular topic. So yeah, man, that's awesome, and we appreciate your friendship and encouragement. And man, you guys are doing really great work. Anyway, so folks, thanks for joining us again. If you would like to support us and support our work, www.patreon.com/The Good Trouble Show. We always appreciate your subscribe and link or follow and all that kind of good stuff. And we always encourage all of you to support our friends as well. Again, Vinnie and Katie at Disclosure Team are doing really great work on this topic, and I'm sure would appreciate your support as well. So, Vinnie, thanks again, man. We can't wait to see what you got coming forward. It sounds like you've got some really big things cooking, and I can't wait to hear what this announcement is. That's awesome. Yeah, I might have to ask you off the air, but I know you're not going to tell me, so that's okay.
We'll see. But no, thank you so much, much for having me. It's always an absolute pleasure to speak with you, Matt. So thank you for your friendship and support as well. It really does mean a lot.
Likewise. Cheers. Okay, Vinnie Adams, ladies and gentlemen, from Disclosure Team.